Welcome to the Young Men's Leadership Academy. I'm Derek Brown, the founding principal. When we opened our doors in 2015, we opened to students in grades 4 through grade 6. Presently, we serve students from grades 4 through high school. We had our first graduating class last year. We had added a grade level every year since our inception, and that has been tricky and somewhat difficult because we're creating a plan while growing the plan. There was not a lot of planning time for the work that we were to do, but some of the advantages of being a standalone school is that we are free to look at different options and ideas and to research things that really works best for the population we serve. We're part of the innovation zone, which already stands apart as an incubator, if you will, for new ideas and education. And we pride ourselves on some of the innovative pieces that we have done. The phenomenon of boys falling behind is an international concern. If you look at this data piece, you'll see that this is from the San Antonio Independent School District specifically to look at boys and girls in the 4th and 5th grade tracking reading and math. This is similar information with boys and girls in 6th and 7th grade, and you do see patterns. So a part of our mission is to correct or close some of these gaps. We believe if we create a learning environment that is conducive to the male learner, provide support for their social and emotional development with a focus on progress and growth, then students will achieve at higher levels. In opening and designing the schools, we contracted with some specific people, most notably Michael Garian, who is an expert on single-gendered education. He's a psychologist. This is research-based, and what's interesting for us is that it's brain-based. The bulk of this work was developed using actual measurements of the brains of females and males. And if you see here, there are measurements looking at blood flow in the brain. So some of the most powerful data is looking at the amount of blood flow and therefore thinking activity in each of the brains. And what this study show is that the female brain primarily does not go into a shutdown mode. And if you think about this with a statement I heard years ago, schools were designed for girls to be successful. Girls can sit for longer periods of time. Girls have a much higher ability to multitask. The brain pictures show us that the female brain is primarily active even when they're sitting still and maybe even it appears disengaged or engaged with something else, and it never quite goes off. The male brain, on the other hand, after so many moments of stillness and silence, almost in a meditative state, if you imagine a traditional classroom with the expectations of everyone remaining still and silent, still as possible, silent as possible, the male brain then begins to somewhat shut down. And when I say shut down, I mean the blood flow decreases. That top picture with the blue activity is an absence of blood flow. And this picture came up time and time again when a male student was asked to sit down for 10 to 12 minutes in just stillness and silence. The female brain never really demonstrated this, so there is a difference. We do also understand that there's something called bridge brain, and that this data isn't conclusive for every male and every female. We understand that, and I want you to understand that they're just like any other study in the world. They're not just anomalies, but this is the majority, not the whole. And when we look at bridge brain individuals, their measurements were somewhat different. But for the core, we understand that for a male brain to engage in information, that something else is required, something additionally. And we believe that through these studies, the things that we have set up foster a higher level of engagement. It could work for anyone, but definitely for the male brain. So based on Based on these studies, we created 3 pillars. One is an active learning environment, and that is pillar number 1, based on the Michael Garrian studies. How do we create a space that then gives a male learner a primed opportunity to learn at high levels? The very first thing is the no desk configuration. So the space itself has to be set up so that there is movement involved, student discourse, competition, friendly competition, or collaborative competition. Another piece that we focused on is FOG, or a focus on growth. Something that we have done well is close learning gaps. Focus on where you are as an individual, and we set an incremental goal that you can reach. That's more achievable. And our third pillar is social emotional awareness. We started with this in 2015, long before it became fashionable. And one of the reasons this is based on perception. Perception of self is based on perception of those around you, and how they treat and respond to you then tells you, or gives you implicit cues of who you are, what you're worth, and what your value is, and what you are capable of. So when we talk about social emotional awareness, that's why we start out with Guy Talk, which is really self-improvement school, or just a focus on yourself through looking at the eyes of people who have overcome obstacles beyond what you may be dealing with, or similar to what you're dealing with. But if you look at district or national, behavior data, you're going to see some of this work. So if we talk about perception, if you look at most schools across the country, Black and brown and male students have the higher behavior rates, or expressed behavior rates by the person in charge. So they're suspended more, they go to alternative school more. This is a perception. When you identify with this perception, is it that you then seek maybe innately to fulfill this expressed belief about you? Also, that daily meditation, teaching you to reflect, navigate, and make changes for self-autonomy, I believe comes from self-regulation, and meditation allows you the opportunity to do this. The house system takes seniors all the way down to 4th graders and put them in little pods in which the senior is responsible for leading circle activities. Most of our young men, it's really difficult to talk about feelings, and so we want to provide the space, the opportunity, and to let them know that your feelings matter, and that you don't have to suppress them, and that there are people here to support you. But the big piece is that we're imagining students supporting students, and then helping those students as they enter our program. What's the yield from these 3 pillars? Something I'm proud of is the best schools from the U.S. News, but probably most proud of our 2019 data, earning 7 out of 7 distinctions. This is where we are now rebuilding from. Focusing on AP classes. One of the reasons is because it gives you college level rigor. If you do well there, it's accepted on a national basis, and most schools, or a lot of schools, had already offered dual credit programs. So this gives us an opportunity to do something different once again. Looking at the highest good and possibilities for our graduates, and the programming, we really like to stretch our thinking, and I always end up back at Maslow's model. If you're looking at the deficiency needs versus growth needs, if you come from an environment that's similar to what you would see if you walk outside of our front doors, you know that all of these needs are not met. And even when choosing what you want to do in college, a lot of times it's based on a deficiency needs. If you didn't have things, you're just thinking of a job afterwards and something so that you're doing better than your parents. So we really thought about this. And when we looked at people, if you look at happiness studies, what makes people happy? And that's where this other piece comes in, ikigai. It's a Japanese idea, and I was told that this is a little off from its original meaning, but looking at what you're good at, what you love, what the world needs, and what you can be paid for.